Hey there, REMPCs. Welcome to Rules of Cool, where we interview very special guests, creators, gamers, designers, and world builders. I'm your host, Rem, and today we'll be speaking with renowned video game voice actor George Ledoux and his experience recording, working with some of the big names in gaming, including Battletech and more. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss it. Now, in Rem Alternus news, Exit Vector is the aerial combat minis game coming to Kickstarter March 28th. Give your pilots some much-deserved attention as you use this rules-like game on its own or as part of your cyberpunk role-playing game. Get your rigor on with Exit Vector and follow the link here to check out the project. Don't forget to enter your email. Well of the Worlds is coming to Kickstarter on April 4th from Mobius Worlds Publishing. Powered by Prowlers and Paragons Ultimate Edition, this TTRPG setting transports characters into a new fantasy world where they discover they have powers they didn't have in their home world. Inspired by Japanese isekai portal fantasy stories, this is a world of adventure for you to explore. Learn more by visiting the link below and following the project. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to my guest for today, George Ledoux. George, it's great to have you.
Well, it's great to be here. First time appearing on your show, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
And hopefully not the last.
Well, I've got a pretty open schedule.
I'll be like, oh, I need to fill this slot. Let's just bring George back so I can just talk with him.
I've been in that role before, Rem. So no worries. Yeah, awesome. I've been called in for many times. Can you come in because nothing else is happening? Sure.
Well, George, for those who don't know, is a celebrated voice actor and voiceover producer as well now. So we're going to get into some of that and a little bit of an ulterior motive because we're going to bring it back around to gaming as we like to do. So this is currently being recorded in February, and at the end of March is the Battletech Mercenaries campaign coming to Kickstarter. And so we're going to be talking to George a little about what Battletech means to him as well. So stay tuned because lots to come. But the first question I love to ask everyone, George, is what is your history as a gamer?
My history as a gamer?
Uh-huh.
Wow. This is going to be a short interview. Let's see. Well, basically, I'm fairly old now. I'm 61. And so for me, I played a lot of games in my youth, but they were always at like the arcade where, a fistful of quarters. And that was all during high school. But it was, that. And growing up, I played a lot of games like that, too, because when my family would go to, the beaches and stuff, we'd go to the arcades because I wasn't big into getting sand in my shorts and stuff. But anyway, that was that until kind of high school. Once high school started, I never played him again because I suddenly had no money. And any money that I did get, I was trying to save it so I could get a car, because high school kid, hey, better start young. I wasn't even thinking about college or anything because no one in my family had gone. So basically money was tight. So it's like, okay. So then the next time gaming came into my life, I heard of stuff, but really on the peripheries of my world, it's like I used to go to this toy and hobby shop that would sell board games, but I used to look at them and, look at them and read them and stuff like, Settlers of Catan and stuff like that. I'm like, this looks incredibly complicated. Who the hell would play this? I couldn't imagine because I never had like local friends because where we lived, it was kind of rural. So, there was high school, but I went to a big regional high school. So nobody lived near me. So I'd only see the kids at school, and the only thing we played in school were like different card games like Uno and stuff like that. So anyway, the next time it came around was basically when I got involved with video games as a voice actor. So
Neat.
we're talking the late 90s.
Okay, and that's a beautiful segue into my second question, which is, what is your history as a voice actor? So let's tie these two together.
Well, it's all going to tie together with Battletech as well, because where I lived in Massachusetts, in just one town over from where I lived, there was a game developer called Cyberlore. And Cyberlore, I had gotten involved in doing voiceovers just the beginning of my career before I knew of Cyberlore. But once I had a demo, I was trying to find places I could send the demo, and someone said, "Oh, you should send it to Cyberlore. They're a game company, and they might want to use you to do voices for a game." I'm like, "Wow, that would be cool," because I'll never get to do animation of any sort because I live here in Massachusetts. So it's like a video game might be better than nothing. That's how I looked at it, honestly. So the very first thing I ever did for them was for a game called Majesty, a fantasy kingdom sim.
Ooh.
And I can say that at like conventions when I get invited to conventions as a guest, and people will either just stare at me blankly, like, "Oh, I've never heard of this thing," or they're like, "Oh my God, that was my favorite game. I played that thousands and thousands of hours as a kid with my sister, with my brother. We played it so much. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to you." Like they treat me suddenly like I was, an incredibly famous voice actor, and I'm certainly not. But then they would tell me wonderful stories of how that was like the best part of their childhood, and just like really touching that something I did so long ago and really hadn't thought about for a long time suddenly has now become a real touchstone for a lot of people, simply because of the time that's gone by.
Yeah.
Kids were playing that in like the 2000s, early 2000s or 90s or whatever. And now they're old enough and they're they're like developers, and they're in all kinds of industries, but they go to conventions and whatever. Because I just went to one and I had so many people that talked about Majesty, and was like, "This is great." So after Majesty, because that went very well for Cyberlore and stuff, the next thing that they called me in to talk about and to have me work on was a game called Mechwarrior, and I'd never heard of it, not a clue. And I remember them showing me what Mechwarrior was on their computers, because they had Mechwarrior 4 Vengeance, which was the computer game that was out at the time for them, that because they had, that's what they were working on, because they were working with FASA and stuff like that. So anyway, so the title I worked on was called Mechwarrior 4 Vengeance, and it was called the Black Knight Legion. And I played a character called Colonel Lawhorn, who is a typical, hero. He's the leader of the mercenary group, but then he gets killed. Spoiler, he gets killed. The 1999 game, I think. So if it's a spoiler now, well, I'm sorry. But anyway.
It's past the statute of limitations.
Right, right. But I still remember I can still envision it when they first sat me down to show me at the computer what Mechwarrior was. And I'm like, "Wow, this is wild." I said, "Are these things like robots?" And they're like, "No, they're piloted. They're like walking tanks." And I'm like, "Wow, that's wild." And they had me try to play the game. If you've never played a video game and suddenly someone gives you a mouse and a keyboard and says, "Oh, and you do this and you do this and you move this," I'm like, "and you can turn your head, but you're still walking forward." I'm like, "You know what? Let's just do the voiceover."
So you aced it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I aced it. I basically saw how they blew up a lot, which was fine. That was fine. But anyway, that was it. That was the early days, and it just progressed from there. But yeah, so the Battletech titles were some of the earliest things I had ever done.
That's so cool. And from there, you kind of have you gone into more video games? I know you did our vocalists and
Oh yeah, no. From there, I mean, that was 2000, I think, year 2000. And what is it now, Rem? It's 2023.
23. Yeah.
23 years worth of games,
Woo!
which you can see on my website. But yeah, I mean, it basically, that sort of opened the doors to the video game developer world, which was a kind of a closed off thing. But in those days, there was a lot less centralized game development. Now, the big AAA titles all come from the same companies. They're all based around the same cities, but back then, games were being developed all over the world. They still are, but you know what I'm saying. I mean,
Yeah,
the bigger
definitely.
titles that could become big weren't necessarily being developed in Los Angeles or whatever. It was smaller companies could develop them for the bigger guys, and so the Battletech stuff was fit that category. So because I did those, I got sort of involved in other companies. I'm trying to think of the best way to make this short and to the point. I do tend to ramble. You may see that. So basically, I got involved with the several other audio companies that would produce voiceovers for games, and so that's how I got involved in games like Neverwinter Nights. I did a lot of stuff for that. I mean, they did Majesty sequels. There was a lot of other companies that I worked for. I worked for Ken Levine, who went on to do BioShock, but back then he worked for Irrational Games, which was based out of Boston.
Neat.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, there was a lot of opportunities for me because I was local, but I specialized in voice acting because back then that was a lot more of a niche. I had been told dozens of times by famous Boston actors, if that's a thing, that you can't make a living doing voiceovers and live in Massachusetts. I was told that many, many times. This is, you either have to go to Hollywood or New York. That's it. And I'm thinking, well, what about you? But they were established. I was talking to people who had been like the narrator for that PBS show Nature, or these other big national things that were created in and around the Boston area, but they were national programs. So there was maybe 5 jobs that actors could do that would become national, that kind of thing. So anyway, I was the voice actor, and so these other people were regular actors that would come into the studio, but because I focused on voiceovers, I could pick it up really fast. I could look at a script and do it right away. Yeah. I didn't have to rehearse it, and I didn't have to, have 20 minutes to cold read a paragraph. And I could read right away. I've always been able to do that and be pretty good,
Cool.
So I don't know. That's how I got involved in more of the other games.
So
kept going.
So kind of bringing that full circle to Battletech and starting there as one of your first projects, what is it like seeing Battletech become such a gaming and nerd staple, and seeing like when you go to conventions, the popularity and how it's grown?
Well, it's a wild thing. It really is, because again, as I have mentioned in other places, for a long time, Battletech, nobody ever heard of it. Sadly, that was a fact. Gamers knew about it, and people who were into the board games and stuff like that, they did it. But I really was never in that. I wasn't in the board game world, so its popularity was. I still remember people saying, "Well, Battletech is niche. It will always be a niche IP. So you can't expect them to be doing things like going to conventions, because that was the mindset. Catalyst Games is too small. They're not going to be going to maybe any convention except maybe Gen Con or something like that.
You know too many negative people. They're like, you can't be a voice actor in Massachusetts. Battletech is never going to be big.
I almost, it's my whole life. It's like I've purposely surrounded myself with negative people. And so now I've been trying to turn that tide. I only talk to people who are pleasant. Which really narrows the field. So anyway, yeah, I mean, Battletech now is just an amazingly popular thing compared to what it was, and I mean, even just a few years ago, when they had the very first mech cons, I mean, Piranha Games and Harebrained Schemes, those game companies, they put together MechCon, and I was an invited guest, and I talk about being treated like a rock star because of my involvement, with Battletech, and because I stayed involved. A lot of voice actors, they do a role and then they never look at it again. They move on to the next thing, which is probably the smartest thing to do. But if there's one thing I could say about Battletech fans, is that they are intensely passionate about the hobby and the game. And so that just continued on with the video games. I mean, people that liked it really liked it. And you could not dissuade them by any means. I mean, they just loved it, because I'd be like, oh, well, I'm glad you like my what I did for Battletech, but I said, it's just a small thing. And they'll, no, it's the best thing in the world, and they just go on and on. I'm like, okay, hey, whatever, man. You invited me to the convention. I'll just agree with you.
Gamers are passionate.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And because, and it's almost like the smaller games, the passion is amped up, so the smaller IPs, which at Battletech was at one point, now it's not. It's definitely growing, and it seems to be growing exponentially every year, which is great. I mean, I think it's great, so
there's definitely like an almost like pride that comes with being one of the first people to like it. So people back in the day were like, I liked it before it was cool, or before it was mainstream, or before, and stuff like that. And there's
but isn't that typical of all kinds of fandoms? I mean, you're always going to get that. You're always going to get the people who want to be gatekeepers almost, it's like, well, I was there at the beginning, I still have my D&D sheets when it was all done on pencil and paper, and that's like, oh no, you can't possibly like the game as much as I do. Okay, I've never been that intense about anything, so I but yeah, I mean, I've for the majority of my career, I've never been treated any way but as wonderful. I've received so much love from the Battletech community, and there's always going to be a few rough patches here and there because of the way the world is and things change, but in general, I've always been treated so great, and so I always tried to give back. I mean, I worked on a lot of fan projects that were Battletech based, and people doing videos and things like that, and a lot of the times I wouldn't get paid anything. I just did it because I just wanted to give back to the community. And I even have created my own things on my own, YouTube channel over the years. I've done, I've had I've commissioned people to do things with artwork and everything else. And I do these stories that were all like, audiobooks and things like that. So, if people go to my YouTube channel, just look it up. You can see all these Battletech things that I've done over the years, and so to me, that's just giving back to the community that has given me so much.
And it seems like when I've talked to you about Battletech's success and your role as in your voice work, you always kind of seem surprised where or at some point there was a surprise where you went to a con and people were like, oh, It's you. It's
Oh, hell yeah. The very first con I went to. Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Because, before that, it was like I could read things sometimes on comments or, on different forums. People would say, "Oh my God, George Ledoux did this," and the same guy who did this role in Freedom Force, the video game Freedom Force, he did this stuff in BattleTech. He was Duncan Fisher, and in the game before that, he played a whole bunch of other roles. So it was that sort of thing. But I had gotten used to that. But to go somewhere that was a convention, because I had never been to a convention before, not as anything other than a guest, and that was at horror conventions, like horror movie conventions, because I used to be an actor for haunted attractions, so I would get to go to a lot of horror convention things as with my cast of people that I was part of. Anyway, so being a guest at a convention was really hard at first to deal with, because I do tend to be, very self-deprecating, and that's just my nature. But to do that, to go to a convention and have people just like basically saying so many wonderful things about you and how, all the memories they had of what you've done and what you meant to them, and
you've impacted their life.
Exactly. But you don't think about that when you're doing these jobs. I mean, I certainly didn't then. I think about it a bit more now. But, when I was doing it back in the early 2000s, voice actors, the only voice actors you would ever hear of were the ones that were based in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Or anime people. That's a whole other side of the voice acting world. But I was never in either of those, playing fields. So I never thought about it. I never considered myself famous at all.
Well, it's great to hear, how much BattleTech has kind of meant to you over the years, but that's not the only thing related to Catalyst that you've done. So I kind of want to segue into our vocalists. If you can tell us a little bbit about that and what you've done with them, and we'll kind of relate it to more Catalyst stuff.
Okay. Well, I'll do my best, because I like anyone with, early onset dementia, which I can remember my past much better than the current days. So anyway, I haven't been diagnosed with that. That was sort of a bad joke, but it runs in my family, so I'm always thinking about it. Anyway, so our vocalist, yes. We're talking about Greg Wilson, wonderful guy, big Red Sox fan. So of course I couldn't say no when he asked me to do anything, because I was from Massachusetts. So it's like, okay, he's a Red Sox fan. I'll have to do it. But I honestly don't remember how I got connected, unless it was through one of the other voice actors, which is certainly possible. Back then he was doing our vocalists, and it must have been something like that. I ended up doing an audiobook kind of thing for him, where he had this thing called Icarus. It was like a graphic novel, and I did one of the characters in that, and I think I may have this out of order, but then I did some stuff for the our vocalist, because I remember thinking, this is really cool. That's what it was. I remember seeing somebody said, "Oh, you should see this. This guy is doing Shadowrun games, but he's doing them. He's playing the game live, but instead of just reading all the dialogue, he's having voice actors perform it."
Yeah, it's a video. It's the video game for Shadowrun. Or I mean, he's been running the Our Vocalist, he said last night, for like 10 years.
It's been a long time.
He chooses text-based video games and then brings those voice actors on to play the characters.
Right, and that's exactly what happened. I got to play some of the stuff in the Shadowrun. I think it was Shadowrun Hong Kong. I think that's what the game we were playing, and I was only there in those particular videos for a couple of characters. I remember I played a ghoul character. Yeah, it might have been him. I just don't remember, but I remember Greg saying that was the creepiest voice he'd ever heard up to that point. So I'm like, well, that's good. I've since tried to find that voice. I haven't found the video, so I don't know. But yeah, I did other stuff with him. We did it kind of consistently. It was almost like a once a month thing for a while, but then I got too busy and I wasn't able to continue doing it. But I know, he was pretty passionate about doing it. And the other actors that he has were equally as well. I remember my friend and fellow voice actor Trendane Sparks. I think he still performs with the R vocalist from time to time, and he's also an audiobook narrator for Catalyst. So I mean, there's been a lot of really pretty cool people.
Yeah, and the segue here is that it's starting to come out now. We're producing an audiobook of the fiction version of Shadowrun Hong Kong.
Oh.
And we're bringing you back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't sure how surprised I was supposed to be, but I am an actor, so I can act. Really? Oh, my God. That's awesome.
We haven't really talked about
wait.
Yeah, we haven't really talked much about it publicly yet, but we want it to be a big success. So we've got some great names involved with it, including you, and you'll be playing Gaichu again.
That'll be fun.
And Ractor, who is the rigger, and Mr. Drake, which is one of the Mr. Johnsons that sends you on a mission and stuff like that. So that's super cool. We're very excited to have you.
I'm excited to do something other than Battletech. That'll be great.
Branching out, just going to capture you into Shadowrun.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, it just seems like it'll be a cool thing. I remember I tried playing the video game with Shadowrun, the first one, a little bit. And I was like, oh, this is one of those kind of things where you have to make the moves. And I was like, oh, this takes strategy. I have to think. No, I don't want that.
Awesome.
The games I seem to have played the longest are the kind where you can just keep clicking, hit.
We need to bring you into the tabletop RPGs, and we'll just give you a big dumb barbarian to play. It'll be great.
I'll tell you, the Catalyst Game Lab convention team, they have that core group of people that go to the conventions and show off the products and stuff. At the last MechCon that I got to go to, they were there, and they literally had someone play Battletech with me, on the board game version, so I could experience it for myself and see what it was like. And apparently I had incredible good luck, because I know these things are all very dice-based.
Yeah.
But apparently I had very incredible good luck, and I actually got a DFA, Death from Above, a successful one, and I won. So I was like, woo! I remember someone was taking pictures of me of that.
I love that your story about that is basically like, they moved me around and did things and I won, and yay! Like,
they were explaining the whole thing, but again, anytime there's math involved, my brain just goes, no, you're not even going to try this, and it just shuts off. And so it's like, nope. I think that's another reason I never got into board games, because there's a lot of dice rolling and you have to figure out things, and it's like, no, I can't do that.
Sure.
Because I'm too slow.
So Battletech, now Shadowrun. What are some of the other systems or video games? What other credits do you have to your name?
Well, I'd have to look at my website.
You can cheat if you want to bring it up and then use it as your cue card.
Well, again, I've been going back for a long time. I mean, in fact, it's funny. I just released a video game visual reel, and I was told when making it, it's like, well, you can't make this reel because you have 300 videos. We can't do that. You need to pare this down. So pick maybe 20 and pick the newest ones. That was, so that's how that worked, because I had been involved in so many games over the years, mostly independent games. I mean, I've done some of the bigger ones. Like I was involved in Thief, that video game series. Cool. I did Thief Deadly Shadows. Oh, that's right. I have a shelf up here dedicated to myself.
Hey!
Yeah. You see, can you see?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crooked, but there you go. And see that big Playboy one?
Yeah.
I never talk about that one. Because it was such a terrible game made by the same wonderful folks that made all the, the Battletech Mechwarrior games. But oh my God, I don't know the details, but just a terrible game. But
I love that you're like, we don't talk about that.
no, it's
awesome.
Anytime I've seen anybody playing the game, like on YouTube or whatever, they're just like, oh my God, this is so bad. I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. Oh, but that Dying Light, that's one of the bigger new titles that I've been part of,
Cool.
both 1 and 2. I had a couple of different roles in the first one, and then in the second one, I got to play an old guy, so that was a real stretch of my acting chops. But I had actually worked for that game company, Techland Games, for many, many years, because I would be basically doing a lot of their placeholder recording.
Ooh.
Because it's a Polish game company, but they would want English voiceover so they could use those, put them in the builds they're creating, and test out different things. So I did that for many, many years. I worked on Call of Juarez and Dead Island 2 and all these other Techland titles, and that was pretty cool. What else did I do? Of course, the Neverwinter Night games. I was in those right from the beginning, simply because I got to play a couple of characters throughout those things, but mainly I got to be one of the voice sets. So when you're doing your character creation in the beginning of Neverwinter Nights, which I understand is a D&D, isn't that a D&D scenario?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
I haven't gotten to play it yet, so I don't know too much about it.
But it's a very popular game. When I do the line from the games, if I'm at a convention and else and I was like, I was in Neverwinter Nights, and someone's like, oh, what were you in Neverwinter Nights? I said, show them your steel, attack. And everyone goes, oh my God, because that's a voice set that they picked all the time, because it was male, neutral warrior. So it was like, here's a good vanilla voice to put my character, give my character so I can, play the game. But that's how I can... I explained to them what I did, but of course that voice set was used in all of the iterations that came along, all the sequels. So that was good. I did a game called Arx Fatalis, which was sort of it was a sequel to another one, like I want to say Ultima Underworld or something like that. But I got to play a lot of cool characters in that. Freedom Force, which is probably one of my top 2 favorite games that I ever worked on, because that was based on Silver Age comics.
Ooh.
And that was created by Ken Levine, before he did BioShock stuff. Neverwinter Nights. Majesty Games, of course. We went over those. Yeah, I mean, a ton of things, but it's just, I don't know what else to tell you.
And now you are also doing voiceover producing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, basically, in fact, some of the people who were children and played Majesty when they were children, or Battletech, that also actually was part of they are now game developers, a lot of them. And so when they find out that I'm still alive, they would reach out and contact me and say, hey, this is great. I played your stuff when I was a kid, and we're making this game, and maybe we could get you involved in it. And I said, sure, I do acting, but I also I do casting, because I know a lot of people, and I can also help you with producing them. If you want to do that. I said, I can offer all these different services because I know a lot of people. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm super talented with all these things, but I know people who are. So, I can find them composers, or I can find them people who do a lot of audio work and stuff like that. So that's part of it. But for the audio production, I've done a lot of stuff. I had done a bunch of stuff for Paradox. Paradox. They're a game company out of Sweden. I'm suddenly having trouble remembering. But I had done several game titles for them where I produced, I helped cast and stuff, and we did all that. And I had done a game called Ghost Runner, I did all the voiceover kind of production for that, casting and doing it, and that was a big hit. It's sort of, if you don't know what the game is, it's basically a really fast paced, what some people would call a shooter, but you don't get a gun, you get a samurai sword.
Ooh.
And you're sort of this cyborg, cyborg enhanced robot character, and you're going through this very dystopian, cyber world, and it's a very, very fast paced game. I tried playing it, and I got so frustrated I stopped. It's like, I don't care. I mean, because I wasn't acting in it, so I was like, I don't care. But I had a lot of friends who were, so I said, I don't have to try to play this game. I'll watch videos of it, and that way I got to hear everybody do it.
Fair.
And I'm now, I'm still working with OML. That's who did that game. Did another game called God's Trigger, which was a sort of a top-down. It sort of looked like Miami Vice kind of game where it's very. Lots of shooting and blowing stuff up, but all from a top-down perspective. I've been doing so many things, did a lot of game trailers too, so these things sort of mix and match in my head. What I was actually part of a game, what I did for production. Like I said, if you go to my website, I have these things broken down in there, what I've done. But I don't want to cheat. I'm trying to remember using my brain, because we all can just Google everything, and I try and force my brain to remember.
So what's next for you? What is like the new things you're working on that you're most excited about?
Well, like most actors would probably say, I can't tell you. But I mean, this past year, I got to do a couple of animes, English dubbing of animes. I'd never done anime before. And for whatever reason, I, won these roles. And so that was fantastic. I shouldn't say for whatever reason. It's because my voice matched what they were looking for. Yes, obviously. But I mean, I was never pursuing anime dubbing. But it was fun. And, cool. I would really like to do more of that. That's a possibility. As a voice actor, you're constantly auditioning and then forgetting what you've auditioned for, because otherwise you're going to sit around feeling extremely sorry for yourself and depressed. It's like, well, I really wanted that job. I wanted to work for Progressive Insurance. Well, that's not going to work. You can't do that. You have to just record your audition, do the best you can do, and then send it, and then forget you ever even tried, because that's just the life of a voice actor. You're always looking for more work.
Yeah.
Even if you have agents, and I mean, I have agents, but agents can only send you auditions. That very rarely will someone just say, "Hey, here's a job." It doesn't work that way.
Right.
But
unless it's for Shadowrun audio drama. Shadio is what I said.
Shadowrun audio drama coming soon.
In which case, we're like, George, something. You want the work? You want the work, George?
Yeah, basically that was it, and that's fantastic. I'll take it. I love being hired because of my reputation. No, I know that's not. No, I know that's not why.
No,
I know it's not why. I know
and it's your history.
Yes. I have a little bit of a history with the company, so that's good. Plus, you liked my stuff. You said you liked my auditions for the characters, so that's good. So I'm excited because I love doing audio drama. That was my first love as a kid. I mean, I grew up listening to like old time radio shows and stuff, and so it's like, man, that would be the perfect job for me. I could do that. I wouldn't have to be on camera. I wouldn't have to memorize anything. I could just read it and act it, and I'd be awesome. I said that I would love that job, and I've done some, since then. That's the other thing. I'm working for another company, Apocalypse Studios, and I have been doing a lot of audio drama stuff for them.
Cool.
As they prep their game. They've been building this game sort of spiritually based on the Legacy of Kain vampire game. Yeah. And so that's something I'm very excited about, but I can't say much except that we did all these lore videos that were done like radio plays, and they are awesome. I love them so much. I'm very proud of the work that we did in those, and I did a lot of that helping them cast it and stuff too. But yeah, the sound people they've got, the sound designer they have is named Philippe Braz. He is fantastic. Their writer, Jack Lindsay, he's fantastic. And the CEO of the company, Dennis Dyack, he's extremely well known in the industry, and he's been nothing but wonderful to work with. So I'm really excited for that game. It's called Dead House Sonata. Probably won't be released until next year.
Okay.
But the lore videos are out there. If you want to hear some really cool radio drama stuff, go check those out.
Neat.
So yeah, I'd say that's the newest stuff that I can talk about.
Sure. So with this stuff that's coming out, we have your website posted on the overlay.
Okay.
But where else can people find you, follow you to catch more of your work and keep up with what you're doing?
Well, I do have a Twitter account, and I use that a lot. I actually use my Twitter account in a very business-like manner, but I also post, goofy stuff all the time too. There's a phrase for that, but I'm not going to say it. Where you just put up memes and stuff like that, or just stuff. But I use it actually for a lot of business stuff too. I mean, because there's a lot of actors that follow me there. So when I get the opportunities to help cast a project, whatever it is, I will oftentimes go on Twitter and say, hey, I am going to be doing this. I'm looking for such and such an actor. If you're interested, send me a DM or something like that.
Yeah.
But I do that very sparingly because I've got enough followers now that doing that causes an avalanche to come into my inbox. So I have to be very careful about that.
You get very busy.
Yeah. And I've got a database of things, but why would I use that when I can go to Twitter and have people, But anyway, that's the best way. Go to Twitter, look for George Ledoux, and you'll find me, and there you go. But I'm also on Instagram, but that's mostly pictures of my cat and other things. But nothing wrong with that. If you like pictures of cats, that's a good spot to go. Because I used to be really into photography, so every once in a while, I'll, pull out my camera and go into photography mode and take stuff. I'm also on, Facebook, but I don't really do much with that except for family. I'm also on what's that other one? the one that you're supposed to use for business. Starts with an N. What?
I was going to say LinkedIn is the
LinkedIn. Yes, LinkedIn. Sorry, I'm focused on Indeed simply because I have a friend who's been looking for work and he's telling me about Indeed all the time. I'm like, so that's all I could think of. I said, I know in is part of the name of this website. Yes, LinkedIn. I'm on there as well. And I'm trying to do more professional grade posts on LinkedIn. But it's just not me.
Not fun.
I'm such a goof at times. I need to take things more seriously, but you got to be yourself, right?
Heck yeah.
You got to be yourself.
Pretty darn well with it. So
that's what they tell me. And I'm like, well, what about that bill that has to be paid? I need work, everyone. If you have a voiceover job that you'd like to hire me for, easy to contact me. And I don't work for that much. I'm sure you could afford me. We'll talk.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you do, George, for the gaming community and what you've built for yourself and for people who love the games that you've voiced in. And here's to wishing the Battletech Kickstarter so much luck.
Absolutely.
And that's direct from Duncan, guys. So
that's right, everybody. This is Duncan Fisher telling you to get out there and support your local Battletech Kickstarter. It's the only one in town. And if you don't support it, well, people like me are going to disappear. So get out there and support your favorite game. Come on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, George. Hope to have you back on to talk about any of your projects in the future. Let me know. But don't go anywhere, REM PCs, because we will be right back.
Special thank you again to George for joining us today and celebrating the launch of the Battletech Mercenaries Kickstarter. Make sure you check out the project now at the link below to get in on the special Kickstarter exclusives before it closes. And don't forget you can find more Rules of Cool content on YouTube at www.youtube.com/c/remalternus. We've met with Shadowrun Line developer Jason Hardy, many of the writers, game devs, and freelancers, and soon we'll be having Randall Bills from Catalyst on to talk about all things Battletech. Tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on www.twitch.tv/GenConTV. See you next time, RemPCs.